Welcome to the lecture on technology of pattern making. So, in this lecture we are going to discuss about the pattern materials. So, first of all let us know what is a pattern. In the casting process, the pattern making is the first step. Pattern is nothing but the replica of the casting which we are going to make with certain modifications. So, it is defined as an approximate because it is modified in accordance with requirement of the casting process, material cast and the molding technique being used. So, basically we have the similar shape of the cast, and that is why pattern is required, so that the same shape of casting is produced. So, it is replica or duplicate of the object to be made by casting process. Now, we know that in casting basically we are using the molten metal. We have the solid state metal which is converted to a liquid state, and then it has to be poured in a cavity. Now, the cavity has to be made, and certainly the cavity shape will be same as the casting shape. Now, the problem is that how to make this cavity. If the cavity is simple, then fine, but anyway there are certain methods to make that cavity. So, first of all you need the similar shape of something which is put in a mold, and then that particular item is removed, so that a cavity is formed. So, what we put inside a mold and then further we remove, that is nothing but a pattern. So, design and construction of a pattern is first step in making a casting. So, basically first of all we have to see what kind of pattern you have to make. So, suppose you have a casting which is required of this shape. Now, if you want to make a cavity for this, either you can put in the horizontal direction or you can put in the vertical direction, but the thing is that you cannot make this cavity without the use of certain piece which is to be put in a molding material. So, what we do is we have a box, in that you have initially what you do is you put this half part. So, half part will be put here and like that. This is being put, and this portion basically and all other places will be sand. So, this way you will have some cavity created when you take this out. So, when you take this out, that basically gives you certain cavity. So, for that initially you make with some material, and for that we will discuss about different type of pattern materials. So, in that what we do is once we remove this, a cavity is formed. In that cavity molten metal is to be poured. This molten metal once you poured and solidified, it will give you similar shape. So, basically, but during that process it is not the same, its shape is not completely the same, but with certain modifications. So, that is why the modification what we do will depend upon what kind of process we use, what kind of materials we cast. The thing is that the quality of casting will depend largely on the pattern material design and construction. So, basically the accuracy of this pattern will determine the accuracy of the casting produced. The material with which this pattern is made, if the surface of this pattern is smooth, you are likely to get a very smooth surface of the casting. So, basically you need to have accurate good surface finish pattern which can give you a good casting. Use of expensive patterns can be justified when the quantity of casting required is relatively substantial. The thing is that normally we have to see what is the degree or level of production for our unit. A pattern is used and then we take it out, further we are using for the same pattern for another casting. Now, as we know that the pattern can be used single time, it may be used many times. So, once you have to use only for single time, you can think of a pattern material which should be cheap, because you are using it only for one time, but when you are going to use it for larger number of time, there is deterioration in the quality of the pattern, or there may be the decrease in the accuracy of the dimensions, because there will be wear and tear. So, but then at the same time, if you are using the pattern material in such a way that they are more durable, it will be more costly. So, in that case you have to justify that how long you are going to use it, for how many productions you are going to use it. So, basically we can go for expensive patterns which will be durable, but then we have to ensure that it should be used for longer runs, it should be used for mass production. When only few castings are needed, a loose pattern made from a soft variety of wood serves the purpose. That is what we discussed, that when you need only one item or two item, you need not go for the pattern which is very costly, only on the assumption that it will give a very accurate result, because we have to see the viability in terms of economics also. So, in that case even the loose pieces, loose patterns from soft variety of wood will serve the purpose. Pattern material is determined primarily by number of castings to be made, but also influenced by size and shape of casting, desired dimensional precision and molding process. So, basically that is what we discussed, that we have to select the pattern based on what kind of molding process we are going to use, whether we are going to use hand molding, whether we are going to use machine molding, whether we are going to have a precision type of casting where the accuracy is very important, whether we are going to go for batch production or mass production. So, all these parameters affect the selection of pattern material. Now, selection criteria for pattern materials, that is type and form of material to be used. So, basically we have to first of all see what type of material we have to use, whether we have to use wood or metal, in what form. Method of molding: in molding process what we do is, here the ramming is done. So, in hand molding the ramming is done by hand, whereas in machine molding this is put on a machine. So, this ramming is done by machine, which requires the pattern to be strong. So, it will decide what kind of material. If you want to go for machine molding, the pattern has to be stubborn, it has to be strong. Construction details like provision of loose pieces, core prints. So, when you make the pattern, and if in the molding you feel that molding cannot be possible without the provision of loose pieces, in certain case you cannot make the pattern in such a way that the whole cavity is formed. So, sometimes you have to provide the loose pieces. This we will discuss when we talk about the type of pattern. Also, in the pattern itself you have to have the provision of providing code prints. So, basically when you are making any pattern and if you are there is a code has to be supported. So, there will be certain provision for the code print also, because code has to be rested on both the sides. So, these are the code prints which are required, and this provision also is given in the pattern itself. So, all these things are required to be considered when you talk about the pattern making. Method of gating and feeding to be followed, what kind of gating and feeding methods are there, that will also tell us or assist us in choosing the pattern. Provision of various foundry aids like you can say that chills or sometimes chaplets, all these things, these are the selection criteria for choosing the pattern material. Now, what should be the characteristic of a typical pattern material? First of all, it should be easily worked, shaped and joined. We know that the pattern shape has to be same as that of casting with certain modifications. So, you have to make the pattern similar to the shape of the casting. It means there should be no much of the problem in shaping that material to a particular shape. It means it should be easily machined, easily worked. So, that is the first thing. If you take a very brittle material and try to either machine it or form it or bring it to other shape, it is very difficult. So, you have to have a material which can easily be worked upon and given a desired shape, mostly by machining, cutting or so. It should be lightweight. So, this is the criteria because the pattern is to be handled many a times. When we talk about the manual molding or hand molding, and when it is a small scale foundry unit, the pattern is to be lifted or it is handled by the laborers and they do it by hand. If it is very heavy one, it will create a lot of problem and it will decrease the productivity of the labor. So, basically it should be lightweight, hard and durable. It should have sufficient strength, so that during the handling, even if it falls down or even if there is enough of the compressive strength on it, or if it is rammed even with larger forces, it is able to sustain that. For that it need to be hard and durable, I mean it should last long, so that the cost of making pattern is justified, because anyway this pattern is going to be used for longer runs. So, that will certainly increase the productivity. Resistance to wear and abrasion, corrosion and chemical action. Now, the pattern basically is used against the molding materials, and the molding materials are normally sand using organic binders or inorganic binders, and they are also left in the atmosphere. So, they are subjected to large amount of environmental reactions. So, they are, and since they are in touch with the sand, so they are likely to have wear and abrasion, they are likely to have corrosion, because they are in the atmosphere, there may be corrosion effects, there may be chemical effects, because there are chemicals used with the sand which is in contact with the pattern material. So, all these property a pattern material must possess, so that it is durable. If it is not so, the pattern material will not behave in an optimum manner, its life will be less. So, more on the side we can think that if the pattern material is degraded, not only that we have to replace, so replacement cost is there, but also it will basically reduce the quality of the cast. So, that will further hamper the productivity. Dimensional stability, this is required because we are going to use the pattern weather by weather. So, there may be dimensional variations when we move from weather to weather, or when there is a change in temperature or change in humidity or environmental conditions. So, the pattern has to have the dimensional stability, so that it can always produce the casting of certain size and proper shape. Cheap and easy availability. This is very important, because this pattern, it is initially used and it has to be used for long run. So, one of the requirement is that it should be cheap and easily available. It has to be cheap, because unless it is cheap, the casting process cannot be justified. If it is very costly, it can only be justified based on the assumption that it will have the quality of finish which cannot be produced by other pattern materials, or it is for a very long range of production units. Repairable and reused. Many a times there may be some damage to the pattern. So, our pattern should be in such a material, so that we can do minor modifications by repairing it, and we can further reuse it. So, that will basically decrease the cost of operation, otherwise we have to further replace it, and that will unnecessarily add cost to the production process. Ability to take a good surface finish. So, the pattern material must be such that it should provide you a good surface finish, otherwise the cost of providing finishing will be more. So, you must have a pattern material which have a smooth surface, so that when you cast the material you also get the surface smooth, and the cost associated with machining or giving proper surface finish will be minimum. So, these are the desired characteristics of a pattern material. Types of pattern materials. Now, we will discuss what are the different types of materials which are normally used as patterns. The first and foremost is wood and wood products. So, among the wood and wood products, we have normal wood and then variety of. So, in that you have variety of wood, and also then we have plastic wood, and you have laminated laminated wood products. They are coming under this wood and wood products. Then you have metals and alloys, you have plasters, plastic and rubber, and wax. These are the commonly used pattern materials. Let us go one by one to these pattern materials. So, we will talk about wood and wood products. Now, wood and wood products are the most preferred pattern materials because of many criteria. The criteria like it is lightweight, it is easily available, it costs less than other materials, it can be easily shaped or worked and joined to form any complex shape. All these criteria makes wood to be selected as universally, it is universally accepted to be taken as the pattern materials. About the wood, you know, wood contains 50 to 60% of cellulose and 20 to 35% of lignin. Apart from that, you have some amount of carbohydrates. So, it is the structure of wood. If you look at, you have cellulose and lignin. So, now wood is frequently used when small quantities of castings are required. There is reason behind it, because wood when used, if you are using it in the sand molding for larger number of runs, there may be abrasion on the wood. So, for that it is basically suitable when you are going to use that pattern for long, not very large number of castings to be produced. It has a drawback that it may warp or swell with changes in humidity. Now, in the case of wood, what we should know that it has certain moisture in it. Now, this moisture, if it is more than that, more than the equilibrium content of moisture, in that case due to the moisture it may swell, or if the moisture is less and if it is dried more, then it may warp or it may dimensionally be unstable. So, this is one of the drawback of wood, and for that there is certain treatment required for the wood. There are certain varieties of wood which have a good dimensional stability, but in normal case normal wood cannot be taken as the pattern materials. So, that care has to be taken when we take wood as the pattern material. To prevent excessive shrinkage or swelling, wood has to be seasoned. So, there is a process known as seasoning of wood. In that, basically we are controlling the moisture content of the wood. The wood which is normally used for making pattern is pine, mahogany, teak, walnut and deodar. So, these are the normally used wood which are used for making patterns, which are having that characteristics which are suitable for making pattern material. You have the characteristics of all these varieties of wood, like you have pine wood which is light, ease of working is there and ability to take good finish. You have mahogany which is hard, strong and durable type of wood with negligible shrinkage on swelling after seasoning. So, once you do that, mahogany is quite okay, takes a very fine natural polish, stains well and glues excellently. So, basically joinability is there, good finish is there, all these qualities are there in mahogany. You have variety of teak. Teak is hard and strong variety of wood unaffected by fungus and easily available in the country. So, this is also a positive point for teak, which is mostly available even in this region of the country. Deodar is soft variety, slightly harder than pine, but easily machinable and takes good polish. So, these are the normal type of wood which is used for pattern making. Among all the natural woods, mahogany is the best choice for pattern making work. It is ideal where number of casting required is large and involves permanent production work on molding machines. So, basically as we have seen, it is quite durable, hard and strong. So, it can even be used when we go for machine molding, where it has to withstand large impact forces or large ramming forces. That time mahogany is better suited. So, mahogany is taken as having the more preferred choice among these woods. What we discussed was the seasoning of wood. There has to be a proper moisture in the wood and this is controlled by seasoning. You might have seen the stacks of wood lying on the roadside when you move and when you come across certain wood shop. So, that is nothing but seasoning. Basically they are controlling the moisture content and seasonal variations are basically maintained. So, seasoning, what it does, seasoning is minimizing the effect of subsequent moisture variation by adjusting the water content of wood near to equilibrium level under exposure to average atmospheric conditions. So, basically this is a process by which we control this moisture content or water content. It can be done by natural or artificial methods. So, there are many methods by which the seasoning is carried out. Natural seasoning, for that basically we are leaving the wood in air or in flowing water. So, basically wood is stacked in open spaces and subjected to air drying for a period of up to one full cycle of weather conditions. So, basically we are putting in the environment and we are exposing it for one full cycle of weather condition. You can also immerse in the flowing water which will basically wash away the moisture which is there in it by osmosis process, and further we dry it for shorter duration. So, that this water level is maintained at the equilibrium level. There are even artificial methods of seasoning. Artificial methods in that basically timber is stacked in drying kilns and subjected to fast air drying. So, basically they are fast methods which do this at a faster rate. So, hot air will be passed and it will be done quickly. Electrical seasoning also is there, where it is exposed to high frequency electric field which brings down the moisture level quickly in no time. Chemical seasoning, where the wood is immersed in suitable salt solution and then exposed to air for drying so that the moisture content is kept under control. Now, we will come to another variety of pattern materials, that is metals and alloys. In case of when we talked about wood, wood is universally accepted, but the drawback is that it is not as hard and durable as metals. When we have to use it for larger production runs and when it has to be used against sand and also chemicals, the quality of finish, the quality of durability comes into picture. So, in that case the metals and alloys, they are a good choice. They are expensive, but more dimensionally stable and durable, because in metals, in the case of metals, there is no problem related to the moisture variations as we face in case of wood. So, metallic patterns that way also they are hard and durable. So, they can be used for longer runs. For repetitive production of casting in large quantities, you can use them because they are having larger strength and their durability is more. Commonly used metals are aluminum and its alloys, cast iron, steel and copper based alloys such as brass and bronze. So, these are the normally used alloys which are used for pattern materials. The factor to be considered is availability, castability, machinability, surface finish, weight, brittleness, cost, etc. Like when we have to take any metal, like the normal metals which we select is aluminum, cast iron, steel or copper. So, if you look at that availability, you can say that it is okay for all the metals. Castability, if you look at, for cast iron it is quite good. For steel it may be difficult because it is an alloy. So, castability is not so good. If you look at the machinability, the cast iron has good machinability. Then copper also has good machinability or its alloys. Surface finish, with most of the metals we will have better surface finish, especially with you can have like aluminum, or you can have even with steel surface finish will be quite good, or copper even. Weight, among in that sense aluminum is preferred choice. So, because aluminum is light. Brittleness is a problem and cast iron may fail in this aspect because cast iron is brittle. Then cost, certainly you have to see the cost and you have to go for that material which is having less cost. So, that these are the factors which will decide about what kind of metals or alloys should be chosen. Next material is plasters. So, gypsum plaster, that is plaster of Paris, basically it is a good pattern material in the sense that it sets when it is mixed with water and allowed to set for some time. So, in the cavity if you put the gypsum plaster of required amount and give the water, mix them and leave them, they will take that particular shape and your pattern is made. So, this is a good material. It has also certain expansion coefficients, it expands. So, basically it also takes care of that also. So, when gypsum plaster is mixed with correct amount of water, sets and gives you a hard mass which has a good compressive strength and good pattern. Ordinarily they expand on solidification. So, basically shrinkage allowance can be offset if the gypsum plaster of certain particular expansion rate is taken. They can be prepared either by directly pouring the slurry of plaster and water into desired shape, or by sweep and trickle method. By the sweep and trickle method also you can make the pattern. Then other varieties are plastics and rubbers. As we know that we need nowadays the materials should be light and it should be chemically inert. In that case these plastics are very good choice. It has a very light weight, they can be handled very nicely. So, hard plastics offer another alternative and preferred with processes that use strong organically bound sands that tend to stick to other pattern materials. So, this is another advantage of using plastics, because when we use the organic binders, in that case other pattern materials are posing problem in the sense that they stick to the pattern, but in this case they are not posing any problem. Expanded polystyrene is used in case of full mold. So, this is a kind of plastic where beads are put in the cavity and expanded so that they take the shape of the cavity. So, that is a good example of the plastic based material, pattern material used in the pattern making. So, we have to use both kind of thermosetting and thermoplastic material. Thermosetting is certainly harder than thermoplastics, and you have different varieties of thermoplastic and thermosettings. Plastics, like in thermosetting variety you have epoxy, polyester resins which are used. In thermoplastics you have polystyrene which is mostly used. We also use rubbers. Silicon rubbers are also used as pattern materials. They are softer materials, they are used for making even dyes in special cases. Epoxy resins have become very popular in nowadays. Now, this advantage of these plastics is that they have a good strength to weight ratio. So, that is why they are preferred, high strength to weight ratio like 5.4 compared to 4 for aluminum alloys and 1.2 for cast iron. So, if you look at this point, you see that they are very light and we have a very good strength to weight ratio as compared to other materials. Low cost of working, they are soft. So, you have low cost of working for it. Even for furnaces also you require a low temperature furnace which can melt them. Good resistance to wear abrasion and immunity from moisture and effect of mild heating. So, this is a very good quality for which the plastics are preferred. Then you have waxes. This is the another variety of pattern material which are used for investment casting. Waxes are used when you have intricate shaped castings. These waxes are basically coated with certain materials, and then further you are making another coat over it and drying it, so that say good thickness of coat is developed. Then this whole unit is heated, so that wax comes out and a cavity is generated. So, this commonly used waxes are paraffin, canauba, shellac, seracin and macrocrystalline wax, and these are the properties like low, and most of the important properties: low ash content, tensile strength and hardness should be better, good wettability, resistance to oxidation, low shrinkage, low melting point and resistance to primary coat material, because we are going to further first of all go for primary coat. Blending of waxes are done by making the additives and give special qualities to the wax. These patterns can be made by injecting liquid or semi liquid wax into a split die. Then patterns are smaller in size, so they are added with the runner or sprue by welding, and then whole assembly will be having that runner or sprue, and it is like investment tree in case of investment casting. Investment casting is the one which uses wax as the material. So, these are the normally used pattern materials. Next we will discuss about the types of patterns and pattern allowances. Thank you.